What kind of woman walks straight up to the richest cowboy in town and asks if he needs a wife or a witness? Felicity Fremont did, Montana Territory, August 1883. The sky over Dawson's Hollow looked bruised and dark, heavy with a storm waiting to break. Dust rolled through the street in gray waves as the stagecoach stopped in front of the post office. When Felicity stepped down, holding a single worn carpet bag, every person on the porch stopped talking. She had two small children holding tight to her skirts. Vera, 6, sharp-eyed and quiet. Virgil, 4, wide-eyed and scared. Felicity's black dress was faded at the seams, her boots cracked, and her hair pinned back in a way that showed the last few months had been harder than she ever planned to survive. She was 23 years old and already twice widowed. Exhaustion settled in her bones so deep she felt it with every step, but she kept her head high. She had not come to Dawson's Hollow for pity. She had come for one man, Isaac Jennings. He stood across the dusty road beside the livery barn, tall and still as a post. His hat cast a shadow across his eyes, but everyone in town already knew what those eyes looked like: dark, quiet, and unreadable. Isaac was a man who built a fortune before he turned 25. Cattle, gold, land. Everything he touched grew. Every woman who tried to marry him failed. He refused all of them. Too proud, too private, too stubborn. But Felicity walked toward him anyway. The wind pushed dust into her skirt, but she did not stop. When she reached him, she lifted her chin and met his eyes head-on. "Mr. Jennings," she said. Her voice shook once, but she steadied it. "You need a wife or a witness." The town went silent. Even the horses seemed to hold their breath. Isaac straightened a little, his gaze sliding from her face to the two children at her side. Vera held her jaw firm. Virgil hid behind his sister's arm. Isaac's voice came low and slow. "That depends. What exactly do you mean by that?" Felicity pulled a folded paper from her carpet bag. The edges were torn from being opened too many times. The ink was faded. But the truth inside it had nearly cost her life. "A deed," she said. "Land my late husband bought. But the ranch beside it claims it is theirs. They burned my barn. They threatened me. And the county judge will not listen to a poor woman." Her fingers trembled as she held the paper. "But they will listen," she said, "if I am a Jennings." Isaac stared at her long enough for the storm clouds above to rumble. His jaw tightened. "You think marrying me will fix that?" he asked. "I think marrying you is the only way they won't steal what little I have left." Quote, "You're not from here." "No. You have nothing." "Just these two," she said, placing a hand on her children's heads. "And a name I am trying to keep clean." The wind caught her hair, pulling strands loose around her face. She stood in front of him with no pride left to hide, only a desperate courage she had forced herself to carry. "I do not want a wife," Isaac said. "I do not want a husband," Felicity answered, "but I will not run again." Something in those words seemed to reach him, maybe the steadiness, maybe the fire, maybe the way Vera and Virgil watched him like he was the last safe thing in the world. Isaac exhaled once. Then he said, "Come with me." He turned and walked up the street toward the church. Felicity hesitated only a second before following, her children's hands gripping hers. Inside the church, the preacher was sweeping the front pew. Isaac spoke 3 simple words: "We need vows." The preacher blinked, dropped his broom, and scrambled for his Bible. There were no flowers, no guests, no ring, just a widow, a cowboy, and 2 small children sitting together on a wooden pew while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the ridge. Vera sniffled quietly. Virgil chewed on the corner of a hymn book. Felicity spoke her vows with her hands clasped so tight her knuckles ached. Isaac spoke his with a low, steady calm that made the preacher look up once in surprise. And just like that, Felicity Fremont became Felicity Fremont Jennings. When it ended, Isaac turned to her. "You are a Jennings now." He walked her and the children to his ranch. He gave them 2 rooms, one for her, one for the children. He didn't touch her, didn't crowd her, didn't ask more than what she offered. Every morning before dawn, he rode out to work the land. Every evening, he came back smelling of pine and dust, At supper, he sat quiet while the children talked, and Felicity served beans and cornbread. At night, she lay awake in the strange silence of a house too big for her and 2 children, wondering if she had just tied her life to a storm she couldn't control. A week passed. Then 2. Then one night, while she folded laundry by the hearth, Isaac came through the door with blood streaked down his sleeve and his shirt torn wide at the shoulder. She gasped. "What happened?" "Fence trouble," he said. "Someone thinks I'm getting too close to the East Ridge." Without thinking, she grabbed a basin, kneeled beside him, and cleaned the cut. Her fingers brushed the hard muscle of his arm as she worked. His eyes stayed on her the entire time. "You should not get mixed up in my problems," he said quietly. "You married me," she answered. "I did not marry you for this." Quote. She looked up at him. "Then why did you marry me?" He didn't answer. That night, she found him on the porch staring at the stars. She stepped beside him, close enough to feel his warmth through her dress. "You ever been in love, Mr. Jennings?" she asked softly. "No." She smiled a tired, knowing smile. "Me neither." He looked at her then, really looked, and something between them shifted like a door slowly opening. The next morning, the wind carried cold from the mountains, the kind that warned winter would come early. But Felicity felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The morning after that quiet moment on the porch, the air carried a bite that hinted at early snow. Felicity woke before the children, the house cold enough that her breath clouded the air as she lit the stove. She worked slow and steady, letting the warmth spread through the kitchen while her thoughts circled back to Isaac's face the night before. There had been no promises spoken, but something had changed. She felt it in the steady rise of her heartbeat each time she thought of him. Vera came in, rubbing her eyes. Virgil followed, dragging his wooden horse by its string. Felicity tried to smile, tried to push away the worry sitting heavy in her chest. Trouble always had a way of finding people who couldn't afford more of it. And Isaac Jennings had stepped right into hers. When Isaac came downstairs, his coat already on, he paused in the kitchen doorway. His gaze swept over her, the children, the warm stove, and something softened in his face. "I'll be back before dark," he said. "You always are." He opened his mouth like he meant to say something more, then stopped. Instead, he reached into his coat and set a paper on the table. "What's that?" Felicity asked. "Bank transfer. Ownership papers for a herd up north. I need to sign an anaconda. I'm riding out tomorrow." She nodded, thinking that was all. Then he added, "I want you to come with me." The words hit her like a door opening she didn't expect. "You want me to ride with you?" "It's time you saw what's yours, too," he said. Her breath caught. Not from fear, from something else, something warm. They traveled the next morning. Isaac drove the wagon through rolling hills that turned to pine-packed slopes, then down into a patchwork valley where the mining city of Anaconda rose in smoke and noise. Felicity held the children close. The place felt too loud, too fast, too sharp. At the bank, the clerk stood straighter the moment Isaac walked in. His presence filled a room without him raising his voice. While he signed the papers, Felicity stood near the window and saw women in fine dresses staring at her. One whispered behind a gloved hand. Felicity lifted her chin. Let them stare. She had survived worse than whispers. When the papers were finally done, Isaac rested a hand on her back, guiding her out of the bank. His touch was warm, steady. It sent a strange shiver down her spine. "Half the herd goes to my lower pasture," he said as they walked. "Winter's coming. You say your land like it isn't mine too." He didn't answer. His silence wasn't cold. It was careful. On the way home, they stopped by a patch of aspens where the leaves shivered like coins. Felicity laid out bread and cold ham while the children chased each other through tall grass. Isaac leaned against a tree watching them. "Vera's sharp," he said. "Sharper than most grown men I know." "She's had to be," Felicity answered. He looked at her with a softness she hadn't seen before. "You kept them safe," Isaac said. "You didn't break." "I didn't see another choice." "You think anyone who survived had one?" The wind picked up, tossing golden leaves around them. She looked away, her throat tight. When she looked back, Isaac was still watching her. Not judgmental, not guarded, just present. By the time they reached home, Virgil was asleep between them on the wagon seat. Isaac spoke without turning his head. "I didn't marry you for your trouble," he said, "but I'm not walking away from it either." She looked at him, heart thumping harder. "And what about the rest?" she asked. "The part where we share a name but not a life? I'm talking about the part where maybe I want more than silence in separate rooms." He didn't speak right away. The wagon wheels crunched over the gravel, filling the quiet. "I never figured myself for someone who deserved more than silence," he said finally. She didn't push. She felt the whole world balancing on that one truth. Later, after the children were in bed, he returned carrying a carved wooden box. He placed it on the small table by the hearth. "What's this?" she asked. "Belonged to my mother," he said. "She kept keepsakes in it. Letters. Ribbons. Thought maybe you'd want it for things that matter." Felicity opened the lid. It smelled of cedar and lavender. She ran her fingers over the smooth wood, then looked up. "Thank you," she whispered. Isaac nodded. "I'll see you in the morning." But before he turned, his fingers brushed hers, just a touch, nothing more. But it changed the quiet between them. It held something new now. Days passed. Frost came early. The wind grew colder, sharper. Isaac left chopped wood on the porch each morning. Felicity mended his shirts without being asked. Vera helped with chores. Virgil followed Isaac around the yard like a small shadow. But trouble never stayed gone for long. One morning, a sharp knock rattled the door. Felicity opened it to find a stranger with trail dust on his coat and a pistol at his hip. "You, Mrs. Jennings?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I'm Eli Wren," he said. "Old friend of Isaac's. I rode in because he sent word. Survey team's changing the boundary lines. That's going to stir the hornets." Felicity held her ground, her chin steady. "They've been stirred," she said. Eli tilted his head, studying her. "He told me he married," Eli said. "Didn't say she had iron under her skin." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. When Isaac returned and saw Eli on the porch, he didn't look surprised. Just tired. That night, the children fell asleep early, and Felicity washed dishes while Isaac leaned in the doorway watching her. "You trust him?" she asked quietly. Isaac's gaze never shifted. "He saved my life once," he said. "That's enough." She nodded, drying the same plate twice, worry tightening her shoulders. "Isaac, what happens when the new boundary line gives me more land to defend?" Quote, "You're not defending it alone." Felicity looked at him then, heart unsteady. "And where am I, Isaac? Behind you? Beside you? I need to know." He stepped forward and gently took her wrist, his thumb warm on her pulse. "You're beside me," he said. "I've never let anyone stand there before." Her breath trembled, but she didn't pull away. "I'm not good at leaning on people," she whispered. "You don't have to lean. Just don't walk off." Outside, Eli's low voice drifted through the night. A coyote cried in the far field. But inside the house, Isaac's fingers slid from her wrist to her palm, holding steady. "You asked me if I needed a wife or a witness," he said. "Truth is, I needed both." Felicity's voice went soft. "And I needed somewhere to stop running." Isaac stepped closer. The air between them warmed. "You found one." Late that night, she didn't close her bedroom door. When he passed the children's room, Isaac paused to tuck the quilt around Virgil, then followed her upstairs. The wind rattled outside, but inside, something strong took root. Winter settled over Dawson's Hollow like a heavy blanket. Snow piled against the fence posts. The sky stayed gray for days, and the wind slipped through every crack it could find. Felicity woke each morning before the sun, the stove cold, the air sharp enough to sting her lungs. But the house felt different now. Warmer. Steadier. Isaac filled the rooms with a quiet kind of care that wasn't loud, but it was there in every corner. He spent his days hauling wood, checking the cattle, repairing fence lines, and coming home with frost in his beard. In the evenings, he carved wood by the fire while Vera read from a borrowed book, and Virgil drifted off, curled beneath Isaac's arm. Felicity mended clothes, stirred stew, patched quilts, and felt the house slowly shape itself into something like a real home. One morning, Isaac brought back a letter from Deer Hollow. He handed it to her before taking off his gloves. Felicity saw the handwriting and went still. Her uncle, the only blood she had left in Kentucky. She opened the letter with stiff fingers and read it twice. The words felt heavy in her stomach. "They want Vera and Virgil," she said quietly. "Says they have kin willing to raise them. Says it'd be better for them than living out here." Isaac's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. "I'm not sending them," Felicity whispered, "even if that name on the letter carries more weight than mine ever did back east." Her voice cracked. She covered it with a breath. "I know what it means to be unwanted," she said. "I won't let them feel that. Not ever." Isaac nodded once. Solid, certain. "Then they stay," he said. Tears filled her eyes but did not fall. She reached across the table and rested her hand on his. His fingers wrapped around hers, slow, steady, sure. After that, winter grew harsher. Snow hammered the roof. The creek froze solid, and even the cattle huddled close to the barn. Isaac spent hours in the bitter cold, limping sometimes when he came inside. Felicity noticed, but didn't say anything until he stumbled into the yard one afternoon with blood darkening his trouser leg. She rushed to him. "What happened?" she asked, grabbing his arm. "Snagged myself on barbed wire," he muttered. "Fool thing." "Sit down before you fall down," she said firmly. He obeyed. She knelt in the snow, cut the fabric, cleaned the wound, and wrapped it tight. His jaw flexed once, but he never pulled away. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I'm your wife," she answered. "I mean in every way that matters." He watched her with a look she couldn't read. "You don't have to take on my trouble," he said softly. She met his eyes. "I want to." Something in his face melted, something he had kept locked away for years. He reached up and cupped her cheek with his rough hand. "You made this place feel like more than dirt and fence posts," he said. "You made it feel like home." That night, she crawled into bed beside him without hesitation. His arms slid around her waist, pulling her close. The wind rattled outside, but inside it was warm. Safe. Right. Spring arrived slow but sure. The snow thinned, the creek cracked open, and patches of green appeared across the fields. Felicity knelt behind the barn one morning, running her fingers over the first crocus pushing through the soil. She whispered a thank you under her breath. Vera planted peas in neat rows. Virgil chased the chickens until Isaac guided him toward a better job scattering feed. The days felt lighter. On the morning of their first anniversary, Isaac saddled 2 horses and left a note on the table. Back by dusk. "Feed the hens." Felicity found him waiting near the ridge where the boundary line met the pine stand. He had built a bench there, plain, sturdy, facing the sweep of their entire land. Green fields stretched beyond the fence lines. The roof of their home glowed in the sunlight. "I wanted you to see it from here," he said, offering his hand. She sat beside him, breathing in the quiet. "This was never the life I pictured," she said. "Me either," he replied, "but I'd choose it again." He turned toward her. "I love you, Felicity." She smiled, soft and certain. "I know, and I love you too." He kissed her slow, his hand warm against her cheek. They stayed until the sun dipped low, then rode home side by side, their horses moving easy beneath them. Years passed. Vera grew sharp and steady, reading law books and arguing points like a judge. Virgil learned to rope a calf before he turned 12. Felicity planted herbs behind the house and tended her soap stove. Isaac found reasons to brush his hand against hers whenever he passed her in the kitchen. Their life wasn't perfect, it wasn't grand, but it was theirs. And some lives weren't built from big moments. They were shaped by the quiet choosing of each other, over and over, day after day. One warm morning, long after the creek ran full again, Felicity stood on the porch with her hands cradling her belly. Isaac came up behind her, his arms slipping around her waist. "Boy or girl?" he asked. She leaned back into him. "Doesn't matter." He kissed her temple. "We'll love them just the same." And they would. Because the girl who once came with nothing but 2 children and a broken deed had found a life she never expected. A husband she trusted. A home she built from the ground up. A love that grew steady as the land beneath their feet. And Isaac Jennings, the man who once refused every suitor, chose her every single day.